Cheers everyone, welcome back. Your Greasy Rockin' Grandma's Handbag back with you. Thank you so much for joining us. We got some VCLT and a little bit of Grail coming up in this one. So Jasper Hoppy Red Ale by Stone and Wood Brewing, 5.4%. Nice roasted red malt, not too heavily roasted. Quite a bit of hops in this one, but I think you're going to enjoy it. So make sure you grab one, settle in, and we'll get there in a second. Alright, some VCLT first off. Mr. Trigger Tunes, Ross. We went out on a dig before this whole Corona shitstorm went down. Didn't end up getting an awful lot at all on the dig, but you know, the company is always worth it alone, and then get furnished with a couple of beautiful bits of VCLT. Stevie Wonder's Original Music Aquarium. I think Ross has given me this. He knows that the wife and I, we have a common ground when it comes to things like Motown and a greatest hit Stevie Wonder. You just can't go too wrong with that whatsoever. The beautiful cover, I love that embossed fish notes on there. I've always enjoyed that. Never actually thought of owning one, but Trigger Tunes has sorted us out. Thank you, sir. This one as well, Alan Parsons project. Eye in the Sky. It must be a thing for embossed covers. Thank you, Ross. I think he sent this along through on the Alan Parsons / Pink Floyd tip. And I can sort of see some of that happening in this music. I'm quite new to Alan Parsons. There were a few different vocalists going on here, which lends to the project element. That kind of threw me a little bit. Musically, more in my wheelhouse, I think. Best song, I have to say, is Mama Gumma, which has to be a Pink Floyd nod for sure, hey? But, yeah, unexpected again, and very welcome. And if any one of you out there is a fan of Alan Parsons, weigh in now, let me know what you guys think of him, who you recommend, which albums of theirs you recommend, or where their best work and peak is. Alan Parsons project. Now this next one, Trigger Tunes is shown on his channel, and somehow I found another copy for me. This is the Vacants with Worthless Trash. 1977 punk album with a future, I forget which one of these guys over here, a future Martin Parkinson, I think the drummer from The Pretenders, or Martin Chambers. I always forget these names. But yeah, studio punk project of sorts. And it's, I think it punches above its weight. It's got a lot of that punk sound to it. Maybe slightly more pub rock, Dr. Feelgood, and that sort of, you know, hard rockin'. But there's a punk bray and brawl in the ball in the strummer-esque vocals in there. And look, great originals. But the first three tracks on here, you've got the Seeds cover, Pushing Too Hard. You've got Beat on the Brat, Ramones, and then a cover, appropriately sloppy cover of Louie Louie. So punk credentials, garage punk credentials, all intact. A fairly pricey little album to find from time to time too. This is on the Beat label. Lovely condition. Thank you so much, Trigger Tunes. That was great. And likewise, this one. I think he's been watching the Top 100 New Wave band Sat, but also knowing that I don't have an awful lot of his stuff, so he's furnished me with a copy of Common One, and very grateful for that too. This is on the Mercury label, and this is Van, 6 tracks. It's a long album, over 50 minutes here. A couple of songs I think are hitting 15 minutes each, which just shows you Van's in expansive mood here, you know, vocalizing and just going with the flow. Slightly more synths and things on this, along with the horns and that of your Caledonia Soul Orchestras. 1980, I think, but very, very enjoyable stuff. A lovely copy to have as well. Local press. Really been enjoying this one, Trigger Tunes. Thank you so much for that one. Really appreciate it. Alright, the next bits of stuff, VCLT, come from Mr. James Griffiths. He's got a note on appropriately Pink Floydish paper, and the first thing he sent through was a book, Living Life Without Loving the Beatles, a Survivor's Guide. So a very tongue-in-cheek, very clever and well-written book, basically on, as it says, surviving without loving the Beatles. I know it was hard for me at first to countenance that idea, but he breaks it down pretty well on the types of Beatles fans there are. You've got your grade 1 basic people, your culture vultures, nostalgic, impolitic. So all these terms he explains and unpacks how these people come to like and revere the Beatles, I suppose. There's even one chapter called The American as well as The Beatlehead. Very, very funny book, but it also actually has you questioning why you would love the band, or what it is that you love about them, and maybe if you don't get along, maybe you're going to resonate with this book as well. Like I said, very funny, one to pick up and have a read of, and you'll always get a chuckle. But in all seriousness, it did have me questioning, what it was I loved about the Beatles. And it all hinges around this idea of having the talk with a Beatles fan, and explaining why your fave maybe isn't as good as what you what they're cracked up to be. But thank you, James. Definitely going to keep that. There's a lovely little inscription on the front there from James too, so I really appreciate that. Now, 3 CDs he sent through. The first one, Candidate Nuada. So this is inspired by the film The Wicker Man. You can see a Wicker Man there. So definite British folk. Really lovely version of it, early 2000s. Close harmony singing, a bit West Coast Crosby Stills, but then these crystalline folk guitars. There's even Bert Jansch guesting on a song on here, and very much a kind of almost a Super Furry Animals Go Commune feel to it as well. Slightly psychedelic, but very, very nicely done. Really recommend. I think he's furnished Alan Static Traveller with another copy of this, but one to look out for. Great stuff. Next one, The Silver Seas with Chateau Revenge. Now this is just a classic indie pop album, but maybe even more than indie pop, classic pop, power pop. I'm thinking Elvis Costello, The Beatles, Squeeze, in that sort of wheelhouse. Just really well written songs, tight arrangement, short, sharp, a lot of heart, good humour in there too, and something that I would normally flick right over, but Mr. Griffiths has targeted me with this, and I'm very glad he did. Just makes you think and wonder why there aren't more bands like this that get and why they don't get the recognition they deserve. They slip through the cracks. Just great stuff. And lastly, Wire, A Bell is a Cup Till It Is Struck. Now this is one we've been back and forwards with on through comments and various Wire videos, and I remember James really plumping for this album as a rather great but unheralded album, and I've absolutely got to agree with him on this. A very, very subversive pop album, a wolf in sheep's clothing, as it were. You wouldn't expect it. There's these kind of very tight, vaguely industrial sounding songs at points, but just, like I said, really tight, very pop, in their own Wire way, and really, really, I knew it was going to be good, but surprised at just how good that was. Thank you, James. Really recommend that. Fantastic stuff. Alright, the next 2 discs were also sent by another VC member, Mr. John, the Digital Gramophone. And he put out the public service duty sending these ones through, and I might have shocked him by saying I hadn't heard or never got around to hearing them. And so he duly sent them across to educate me, and I'm very glad he did that. Broken Social Scene's first self-titled album. I think this is 2003 or 4. And I have to say, had I heard this at the time, this album would have gone on to be a very, very important one for me by now. Obviously, I'm a few years behind, but very good stuff. I can see how influential this has been on bands that I do like. You can see its influence percolate through the rest of the 2000s and 2010s. Collective, I think there's 13, 14. It's a very amorphous number of people, I guess. Some people that went on to other bands, Better Names, and that's a whole other episode in itself, I imagine. But vaguely familiar. I think Super Connected I had heard before, John, only after hearing it numerous times. But outside of that, all quite new to me. Real wall of sound stuff in there, with a dozen people playing on any given song. Kind of had a Bell and Sebastian via, I'm going to say Arcade Fire vibe, just with that intensity, I suppose, in there. But all about that wall of sound and these great songs that peer out underneath it as well. Thank you, John, for that one. I don't know whether I should thank you for this one, but I will. Destroyers, Rubies, very nice. I just can't put this into words, so I'm going to use John's here with his little gift tag. Dylan meets Bowie and random poetic genius. The more I listen to it, the more that becomes apparent, and the less my own descriptors come up. So I'm just going to go with that. Very iconoclastic singer, very much creating his own narratives, dramas, and even own worlds, musical worlds going on here. There's a lot of levels to it, but very clever stuff. Lyrical and musical references abound in here, and it's someone that I'm very interested to go back now and check out. So if any of you other guys are fans of Destroyer and you have a favourite album of theirs, let me know where else to go from here. Although I get the feeling I'd be just as disoriented almost anywhere else in his catalogue. John, thank you so much for that. A great listen, and very, very grateful to have that one. Thank you. Alright, last couple of things now. I asked a certain gentleman who tends to put in doodles like this. Do we know who it is yet? Mazzy? Alright, you get the idea. Asked Mr. Steve Carlson to pick up a record for me. I sent him over some cash to post it out to me. And he allegedly, according to this lovely card here, says that Cat dropped something else in the box. So what he dropped in the box was was this Ride's Weather Diaries. Now, don't have this, Steve, so thank you very much. I've been playing and really enjoying this guy. I mean, it's a reunion album, Ride's first one from memory, 2017, and it didn't get a lot of amazing press at the time. I'm hearing it now and wondering if that was a bit unfair, to be honest. Sure, there's a couple of tracks that maybe where Ride were trying on something that didn't suit them, but there's still a lot of evolved Ride moments, classic stuff that doesn't stray too far from the formula on here. I think they were probably a little unfairly done on this one. Very, very nice sounding press as well. Really, really lovely stuff. Steve, thank you so much for sending that one through. Or Cat, I'm sorry. You didn't have a choice in this matter, did you, Steve? No, really, thank you, Steve. It's far too kind of you. And anyway, the one that Steve did pick up for me was Roland S. Howard's Teenage Snuff Film. So there's a Vinyl Me Please pressing. This is an album that, it's a bit of a cult album here in Australia. One that I've desired for quite a long time now. I've had the CD for a little while, but even that used to be a very tough one to find. So lovely when I heard this was out. Asked my man in the States, who just can seem to get everything done for everyone, Mr. Carlson, and he was able to snare this for me. So this is, well, firstly, Roland S. Howard. For people that aren't aware, it was the guitarist out of the Birthday Party, so Nick Cave on vocals, and Roland S. Howard. After he split and Nick went to form the Bad Seeds, Roland went on to These Immortal Souls, Crime and the City Solution, projects with people like Lydia Lunch, Nikki Sudden, Epic Soundtracks, I can't remember. But anyway, in 1999, this album was put out, and it was kind of a homecoming album in a way. He's done this with Brian Hooper on bass, B Suburban, another Australian classic band, and also with the longtime Cave collaborator Mick Harvey, Cave, and also Birthday Party bandmate of Roland's, Mick Harvey, playing drums and sort of helping with the arrangements and production, I think, as well. Really dark, heavy album, but just a very influential one. And Howard's playing is what I really can't get enough of on this as well. You know, it's got this searing, slicing, and somehow shivering guitar tone on there. You know, he can, you know, go into pyrotechnics, or he could just play 3 notes. Whatever it is, he never seems to overplay. It just draws you right in. You know, it's got one of the best couplets of any album I can think of, when he sings, "You're bad for me like cigarettes, but I haven't smoked enough of you yet." Just, there's something beyond cool about that. Anyway, so this is the a red coloured version, Vinyl Me Please, and just really, really, really happy to finally have a vinyl copy. Original copies of this go for probably close to $1,000, if not more than that. Even represses from 10 years ago were reaching $500 and $600. So, so good to hear it. I'm going to leave you with a little snippet of that after. But I just wanted to show quickly as well, if anyone out there needs a very good documentary, this one is on Roland S. Howard, Autoluminescent. It's named after one of the tracks on the album, but I really, really do recommend, for a great documentary, very respectful and reverent, but you know, not shying away from things. And it just, there's a lot of love and good feeling towards Roland, who died in 2009, 10 years after this album. But I'm going to leave you with a section maybe of Sleep Alone, the harrowing final track on there. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in here. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you're a Roland S. fan. You know, if there's any of his 80s projects that you guys particularly like, I'd love to hear and know what to get obsessed over in that one. In the meantime, though, take care. I do hope you're looking out for yourselves there. Sit tight. Maybe we'll get to dig sometime soon. Cheers, everyone.